2017, and I have with me Eva, and Michelle. Hi, Eva and Michelle.
Hi.
All right, so today we have kind of too many topics for one discussion. It's hard for me not to go channeling, but the point of today, of Thursday night, is just to stay open-eyed. Okay, the topic Eva brought up was just to discuss what Yogananda said last time. And it was sort of, yeah, it just came over me. Instead of usual doom and gloom, it came the understanding that there is a possibility of positive, peaceful transition, positive, peaceful shift. And it's just a miracle. You can't really explain it, right? I still don't understand it. But it just, why does it have to be difficult, right, to shift? Why can't we just shift in a positive way? So as I understand, the plan is the same. It's just the color of it becomes bright and light, and we shift in a positive way. So the topics of the transition are the same as usual. It is the economy, transformation of the economy, positive transformation of the economy. It is the disclosure, especially the disclosure of the aliens, of just the information about the aliens finally revealed to the major mainstream public, and it is the shift of awakening of the public to the aliens, and then the contact, open public contact, and then we continue to shift. So how is it possible for that to be peaceful? And it's a question of imagining it. So I guess the main topic, which it usually comes to the main topic, is it all real, right? Are we real? And I keep reminding myself that it's just not smart to believe at the same time that we are real and that we are not real. So it's a helpful model to believe that the reality is real. We have been trained to believe that the reality is real, and it's a helpful outlook. Even in the countries where Buddhism and Hinduism is traditional, there is a lot of population which don't take it seriously. One friend recently said that they used to go to the church and people made fun of them, him, her, for actually believing God, right? So the churchgoers have strong disbelief in God. Not always, but that was the case for that person. So really being, what's it word? Thorough and consequential, I guess that would be the word. Really being thinking things through. And once you realize the reality is an illusion, basically stick to it and rebuild, transform your worldview based on that. So basically, at least that's what I'm working on, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So looking at all of these global issues is essential to do it from a Lightworkers view and understanding it is the matrix and it is being transformed, and it's a individual illusion and a collective illusion. I guess, yeah, for me the proofs, there are plenty of proofs. Like channeling is one of the major proofs that the reality is spiritual. Yeah. Jim gives us daily, like weekly proof that the reality is spiritual. That there is a spiritual side, and the spiritual side is strong. And the spiritual side is real. And for us, for me, synchronicities would be one of the daily reminders that the reality is a matrix, it's energetic, it's holographic, and it's just an illusion. And nowadays, Reiki is important. Yeah, I live with Reiki constantly. I do Reiki on myself and on things I feel it. So that is another reminder that reality is. Hold on a second. That the reality is illusionary. All right, and then from that perspective, the positive outcome is basically the question of our imagination. How strongly we can imagine it, how consistently, harmoniously, is there integrity, is there coherence in that image. So it is for us to see that future. And when we see it positively, when we see it in a coherent way, then we can make it happen, because it's all an illusion anyway. And the rest of the humanity is just the prompts for us to create it. It's, they will follow, I would say. Yeah, when you imagine it properly, they will follow. Like Gandhi imagining the freedom for India. Or yeah, that's a good example. Other people who saw the future, like my favorite is Jim Watson and Francis Crick, who created that in their minds. And I don't know if it existed before they created it, but once they created it, the humanity awakened to the double helix of the DNA. So one understanding of that bright future is that it's not the government, that the governments will become perfect. It is that they will become irrelevant. I guess that's kind of the common understanding, that at some point it will be local governments and local tribes and local life where people really don't care who is on the top, who is representing. It's just whatever they do out there, it becomes irrelevant. And people mention, I don't know if it will happen, but it would be nice if it was that way. Free energy, and if you don't have to pay for gas, and nobody has to pay for gas and electricity, that would help a lot. And then I guess the property for the land property, how do you say? Yeah, land property. It's so unfair. Yeah, we walk on beautiful places like around California, around San Diego. There is a lot of houses facing the ocean, and 95% of them are empty. So instead of people living and watching that beauty, there are people who visit that place maybe once a year, and they have enough money to own the place and keep it empty for the rest of the year. This is like the place where I guess rich people, they just have the property. It's an investment. It's not the way to look at the ocean, I guess. And you know, the economy, fixing the economy. Yeah, many economists talk about the base income. So basically, some countries already have some sort of it. Russia had some sort of it, but basically giving everybody some sort of basic necessities like food stamps, and then people stop being worried about survival. It kind of lifts everybody's you know, it lifts the poorest higher. And my one of their role models is Allen Ginsberg, the poet who he lived and taught, and he was an intellectual connected to the top intellectuals of the time. He lived on most of the years where he was like really doing the groundbreaking stuff and teaching and meditating and discovering things. He and his boyfriend were supported by a pension. I think it was disability pension from the United States. So they had that basic income which made them free, while the rest of the world were not free or enslaved by the fear. These two people, they had just a little bit which allowed them to travel and to think and to read and to communicate with the top thinkers of the time. So that basic income, base income, I think is essential just to liberate the world, just to make it, just to uplift it, just to allow people to awaken when they are not afraid to die from hunger. There is not much you need. Like you need internet and basic necessities, and everything else is extraneous. Everything else is extraneous. Much of their life is in just meditation, self-discovering, communication with nature, communication with people. It is, if you don't have to fight for survival and take care of the basic necessities, then there is much more opportunity for spirit growth. So when humanity becomes less afraid, there is an opportunity for the shift. And I don't think it's that much of the change is needed. Basically, if you change it a little bit, statistically significantly, like just uplift the bottom one, allow the system to adjust, then the system will follow. And the transformation can be peaceful. In Russia it was peaceful, right? With all their suffering and changes in the mind and mind shift, there was not much war going on. It was just pretty peaceful. There was no war, no revolutions. People went on the street in peace. People smiled. In Russia, we lived in a state where we were really justifiably afraid of our police. Our police were like one of the worst criminals. They were repressive and immoral, like in Chicago in 50s. And then I traveled in the time of the freedom in early 90s. I traveled to the part of Soviet Union which was most advanced. It was Baltic countries. It was Latvia. And these countries, they weren't weren't living under their Russian Empire for a long time, because maybe only from 45 to 86, so it's like only 40 years, so not even a generation passed. So there were still people who remembered free times. There were still people who lived in an independent country, and they kept that spirit. And when the opportunity came, they just liberated themselves from Russia. It was very easy. Soviet Union just didn't care anymore. It didn't exist anymore. So they become independent. And when they became independent, they fired all Soviet police and hired just normal people, just normal boys. And I was so surprised to see the police in less military uniform. It's kind of was funny uniform, you know, with this like Canadians, right? Like not Empire. It's not Empire. They intentionally made it non-serious and not non-military, not threatening. And they were helping people to cross the street. They were answering questions with human expression of the face. There was no danger in them. They were just there to watch around and help people. So, and things like that happened. Yeah, when there is no pressure of the empire, the things like that happened naturally. I mentioned previously there was a period, maybe a year or a year and a half, where all the restrictions from the Soviet system disappeared, and the new system didn't take over yet. So people just started the free trade. They went on the streets and traded freely. And it was pretty abundant time. Abundant time. The little bit of here, little bit there, people exchanged. There was the Russian currency didn't work, so people started buying dollars, and the dollars were used just as some currency, and there were like German marks and dollars were the key, and alcohol was also a currency. But there was a lot of cooperation, a lot of entrepreneurship, and business was starting and blooming, and there was abundance. Because you don't need all that you own, you accumulated in life, so you can give it away, and you don't need that much food. Especially in Russia, people are much slimmer, so they don't need as much food. So it was sort of very, very promising. I saw how much opportunities when there is no big private owners of the land or of their enterprises. So there was people were trying just normally working. Right now, in America, I tried many times to start like a small business, helping people, and you see that in any area of the business, especially in any area like medicine or how do you call it, handyman work, there is so much competition and so much restrictions. You cannot just enter there. The barrier for entering the market is extremely high, especially in medicine. You either have to be in the system or you cannot do it, right? Or in any other production. You can produce wonderful things, but to place them on the market, there is a barrier, like the guild of that kind of. So guilds are, yeah, I guess it is evil. I guess I would say, in very guilds that prevent entrepreneurship and production. I think they are slowing down a lot, and the technology development as well. It's kind of, there are a few areas where technology development is not restricted, and like Android applications maybe is one of those. I don't know. But in other areas, you just can't get on the market with advanced stuff. You will be kind of swallowed by big sharks. Like in biotech, We know how it works. You develop something, then a big shark buys your product, and then in many cases they would just keep the patent and not to produce it. That was with me as well. In my early career, I invented something. It was bought for very cheap price and from our institute, and it never was produced. It was just a competitor which they removed to a very cheap price without using the core system. They just bought the whole company. So you know the evils of the system, but I guess it's up to people just to stop following. Yeah, I guess. Let me bring the example of the dragon. The dragon is strong when people are afraid and believe in its strength. It's the key feature of dragons. They would be expanding their control unrestrictedly, and people would submit. But finally, when one knight is brave enough to proclaim that the dragon's rule is imaginary and the strength is imaginary, their power just disappears at once, and they become little pets, I guess. They become very reasonable and can easily give up and submit. And they wouldn't feel sorry about it because their ego and narcissistic love is so high. They love themselves anyway, so they don't feel any problem in releasing and releasing their control and retreating. So yeah, that system, which seems so powerful, when people stop supporting it, just will retreat. It will retreat. So it's up to the people to believe in a positive outcome. Did you want to say something?
I want to ask you, it's very interesting what you are saying about Russia, because honestly speaking, a lot of things I did not know. How do Russians see right now what's going on, like Putin? Because the Western world, we are trying to kind of create his image as kind of, dictator and not a positive person, but it does not mean that it's necessarily true. How do actually Russians see him? How do they see what's going on right now in Russia?
That question is kind of too grounded for the discussion. I'm really trying to bring it up to the higher level. So from the higher perspective, I would say for people who are low in their vibration, even a dictatorship is a step up. So I mean, it really depends what you compare to what. Like for Russia, which was in really bad shape in 20s and 30s, that kind of enlightened dictatorship is a step up. Yeah, Russia is interesting. There is so much contrast there as well. Like America is a land of contrast, and Russia is also huge. Because there is an echo. There is also huge contrast there, and there is a lot of people with low vibration people who lost the culture. The culture was just lost. There was so many generations of culture without culture. of Soviet Union taking away all their culture, education, and stuff. So illiterate people, I mean, I guess not fully literate, barely literate people, right? And at the same time, there is pockets of really high intellectual and high spiritual life because the system is too obnoxious, too controlling. In Russia, there is a tradition of too much control. The government tries to take everything, and as a result, it has little control of anything. They have very little power to do things. They have a little budget. They proclaim to be in control, and it's like a dragon, yeah. But in fact, the control is very, very, very limited. And the people on the top, they are not actually representing the government. They are just hackers who just hack the system. So they think very short term. So there are pockets, because everything is prohibited. People actually don't. People are used to that kind of situation, and they develop the immunity to brainwashing. Some people have developed the immunity to brainwashing. So those who escape, there is, I guess, even more people who escape brainwashing in Russia than in America, because in American brainwashing is so diverse and so developed. Like the churches, there is like great number of different church systems, so you can be brainwashed in that kind of church versus of that kind of church. In Russia, there is only one church where you can get brainwashed, right? So in America, there is a perception of the idea of positive government, and there is a widespread delusion about the things. In Russia, that delusion is, I guess, even less spread, because the government is so obnoxious. If people are capable of thinking at all, they would see through. So there is lots of people who see through, and there is no system for them. They are on their own, and they group together and form a variety of groups who are very advanced. So, like in metaphysics, I'm very proud of learning the metaphysics in English, but once in a while I go to Russian sites and YouTube channels, and their understanding of metaphysics is deeper, just way deeper. There is it's just a miracle. I can't really explain it. That could be something in the land which makes it so. I think it's the land, the vibrations of the land that make it so. So there are people who are here. You kind of have to play on both sides. You have to be a good citizen, plus you can, on a side, you can do metaphysics, and there you go full steam into that metaphysics and live it. I guess it's maybe the whole Asia like that, but in Russia it's special. It is, I guess, lots of people who are thinking globally, lots of people who think universally, on the level of the universe. And the distances between people are different. Here it's a very individualistic society. In Russia, there is, in Americans, when two Americans come together, there is that repulsion which keeps them on certain distance. It's really rare for people to kind of unite completely, to completely trust each other, to merge. There are very few cases of that. Maybe lovers, and even among lovers, there is a distance. Like, we are lovers, but here is a contract, here is the distance, here the respect. We don't come too close, right? In Russia, I was absent for several years because of the visa situation, and then I came back, and it was like maybe 6 years. After 6 years, I come to my house, my big multi-story building, and there is a security guard there, an old woman. Usually, that's what they do. They just sit there and guard the door of the block. And she asked me how, who I am and where from I am, and I was speaking for 2 hours to her, and the distance to her was completely it was very close friends conversation. In Russia, it's normal. So in America, during all the time, I maybe rarely had like conversations of that kind. Maybe never had a conversation with a person who was really genuinely interested in you and understanding what you are, like listening carefully and asking right questions. So in Russia, it's common for people just to be looking very aggressively on the street, but when they just cross the barrier, they come like really close and they can communicate really closely. So there is that idea in Russia that they will show the world the way. That idea is ancient, and usually they do show the way in a negative way, like don't go there, don't go to communism, don't go to socialism, don't go to totalitarianism, don't go after that kind of empire, don't go after that kind of economy. So Russia is more like a negative experiment, teaching the others, but there is still that desire to jump. So in America, some people want the jump, but in Russia, that desire of jump is in the culture. So whenever there will be an opportunity, Russia will jump into that opportunity. Okay. Michelle, did you want to say something? I muted you, so if you want.
Yeah, I don't know how much of Russia has changed. Like I'm still trying to learn about my ancestry about Russia, and with what you're describing is real enlightening. It's really helping me better understand about Russia in today's world. So I'm pretty much thanking you for kind of bringing me up to date with that history.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because for me, my great-grandparents on my dad's side came here to the States from Russia in the 1850s. So a lot has changed. So I wanted to thank you for bringing me up to date with my Russian ancestry, with what's been going on. So thank you for that.
All right, let me reflect a little. So I guess combining your interest with the topic of the shift in a peaceful way. Russia had that as well. And the key for that shift was the information from the West. So in my life, I was 20. So in 1984, I was 20. 88, I was 24. So I was 24, and I already had small kids in 88, my first daughter. And then the shift happened. And the Russians just, the whole system crumbled. It's like, it's the giant dragon stands on, clay feet, and then it just falls. It shook a little bit and fell. It was visible how it was falling. Chernobyl was the first blow, and then it just, for a couple of years, it was shaking, and it was visibly falling down. And there was silence. People just didn't know what to think about it. Most people, they kind of awakened, but awakened in a way they didn't know what to do. Like, how do you live in that reality? Do you really accept that reality? And there was a voice of from abroad, and it wasn't a voice of foreigners. I guess foreigners came later, and they were as surprised as we were. They came and they didn't know what to say. Like, most of them just didn't know what to say. They were like, wow, I didn't know that's like that. But the key people who gave us the guidance were our people who went abroad and learned and came back, or our people who came abroad and wrote from abroad a lot of stuff. So the information was so demanded so that, you know, everything that came from abroad from our people were like gold. They really show us how people was outside of the veil. And there was that Radio Liberty, which had hired, maybe there was like 10 people working for it, but it was beautiful, wonderful, smartest ever people who were like really helping us to awaken.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only the information, it was the voice. Just the voice of compassion was so unusual for us. A voice of, and just the emotion of compassion. So what I'm saying is, when the shift happens globally, I hope, I pray and preach that our humans who went outside and are now in alien worlds, on the ships, in Pleiades, in Andromeda, those people will be key for our transition. And we spoke to some of them, and a couple of them confirmed that they have a plan for us. They are working on a plan, they have system prepared, they are waiting for the right time to unravel the plan. So I think that would be the key, to bring them here, to give them voice, to listen to them, to help them, to transmit their understanding, and to ask the right questions. So this would be humans and hybrids, mostly humans. And we would be the ones who are able to comprehend what they say, because that would be so far-fetched, so different. The new economy, the new telepathy, the new way of life. So learning from these teachers would be great, and then amplifying the message and explaining it to others. Yeah, so we lived, at that time it was, I think the internet already existed, but it was barely usable. It wasn't filled with information yet. So all the transition, we had internet, it didn't play the role in the, very little role in the transition. A little bit, it was like you can write letters back and forth. So when I went, in '93, I went to America, I was able to communicate, but it was a very poor communication because people on the other side, they, I don't know, they they didn't listen. I was completely upset. I'm sending them important information, and they just, my parents and my co-workers, by some reason I was so distant from them, they couldn't get it. They didn't read my messages, they couldn't communicate on the same level. So that was a big, yeah, heartbreaking disappointment. I was, I couldn't get it. Why wouldn't they answer? Like, I had money, I could send them money to, if they needed time so they could buy the time, but they just wasn't, maybe I wasn't given what they wanted, but there was a barrier. My messages weren't falling on the fertile ground, I would say. So yes, it's all very important that, you know, the person who sends and the person who receives are on the same wavelength. They, you know, one sends, another person has to receive and understand. So before that, in 90, like 89, 90, 88, 89, 90, the information was coming through the radio, from Prague through Radio Liberty. Those immigrants were speaking, and the quality of reception was poor. You know, I had a big, nice radio made, I don't remember where, like in Germany or maybe in Czechia, and with a big antenna, so I was listening to that. And then I found a smaller radio, could walk and listen, so I would listen to the radio. I don't think there was headphones at that time. It was, the whole day was in listening. At work, it was on. At the times when it was permitted, like in 90s, it was already permitted. Until then, it was prohibited, so you would listen only in the night hours. And it made a lot of sense to live at work because you know, why to spend time commuting, right? You can cook there, you can live there, you can wash your clothes there. So many of us lived at work. And yeah, in Moscow, commute was difficult. So that sound of the radio was blocked by Russian blocking stations, which produce just noise like that. And we were so used to that noise, and now when we listen to the recordings of that old transmissions, that sound is so dear to us. It was kind of penetrating there during the transformation. It made certain impact on us, and it's somewhere in the basis of the psychic structure, I would say. So I'm missing that noise, that all the noises of the radio. They are not there on YouTube anymore. So yeah, it was huge, and there was also newspapers and weekly magazines or bi-weekly magazines, twice-weekly magazines, where the main thinkers, main visionaries were publishing their understanding of the situation, and those were read in tens of millions, hundreds of millions. It was very narrow flow, very narrow opening through which few people were transmitting information. So there was very few channelers, but those channelers were of highest quality, and their words transformed the country greatly in a few months, in a few years. That was intellectual transformation, spiritual transformation. Later, there was a reaction, and the whole thing was kind of screwed up. But the initial transformation was pretty smart, easy, and enlightened. There was one of my best favorites. So in I guess in 1991-92, there was already a free radio. It was very unusual. In Moscow, we had a free radio, which was had its own transmitter. It was legal, and they transmitted only to Moscow area. But Moscow is the central city. It has the key everybody. It's like it's like Toronto or New York. It's a place which is very important, and energetically as well, like Paris. So that radio made a huge impact on us. Just the free voices, people like speaking freely with normal way of speaking. And there were times when things were changing day by day. Like there were like developments which were like really important. And there was one person on that radio, Andrei Cherkizov, who every day he was coming with 1 minute speech. Just 1 minute. And it was inspired, I guess the word is tribune, inspired speaker, speaking for freedom and transformation in the poetic language. And this was the most valuable, most brave, most transformational impact ever. All others like kind of caught up the details, but when there was a change going on, spiritual change, that 1 minute voice once a day transformed the whole situation the most. And many people listened to that. Not all, but the people who cared, they listened. So it's when time comes, there is only a few voices which are needed to do the transformation. It's not necessarily like huge numbers. It could be very concentrated effort. I would compare that with Cronkite in America, Walter Cronkite, when basically his individual awakening allowed for the ending of the Vietnam War. He was like the key person to impact spiritually and emotionally and intellectually the change which led to the ending of the war.
Max, I want to ask you something. You actually, you said something which very much resonates with me. Said that people in United States, there is this lack of true closeness, which I'm really experiencing. When I go back to Poland, the people I talk to, my old friends, there's this complete feeling of trust. It's like deep feeling that you can trust what they say, you can trust them, complete openness, you know. But here it's like I'm trying my best to basically offer love, offer trust here. And it's like I can't get it with American person. It's a very strange experience. And I'm talking about relationships, and I'm talking about friendships. Like I have it with a friend who was born in Poland, but I don't have it with any American person. No, and it was actually very, very interesting for me what you said, and it seems to me that in this lifetime I am putting love on these people and love of these people, trying to transform them and open them up. And then there is a moment when they freak out, you know, and nothing happening. Kind of, I can say frustrating. I can say that if I wasn't who I am, strong enough in the core, which is love, I could be probably deeply depressed, broken inside. I'm not, but I could be, because it feels like, no matter, it's almost like when they get too close to the state of love, there is fear and lack of mental health. This is my experience.
Let me reflect on that. So you brought up the topic which I also wanted to bring up. So remember the Spielberg's movie, something about Crystal Skull? No? But basically the whole story of the movie, there was like 12 crystal skulls of aliens, and one skull was stolen, so the heroes would go around, do crazy things, but finally they placed that skull back into the 12, and this 12 connected together and created some sort of a vortex, and there was a huge transformation there, and then they left.
Prediction.
So I recently heard that sort of logic goes about the human incarnations, and each of the humans is one of 12 rays. So the soul is split into 12, and you are one of the 12, and until you meet them again, you are incomplete. Remember Klingon expression of love when one lover says to another, "Without you, I will be incomplete." So that is, I guess, a very important answer. Basically, incompleteness is in our nature. Like I know males have XY chromosomes, females have XX. So we are incomplete even in that relation. We don't have all the chromosomal proper design. Like man is incomplete without woman, but even with a woman, they cannot come into one person. It's always like you cannot really merge into one being. You can do surgery and become one. It's still two different bodies, and that's unsolvable. Basically, give up and don't even try. So the reason in at homeland we can feel that connection is not because they make us more complete. They just help us to feel that connection. So the story of Ramdas tells that story, and I will just repeat it. It's perfect illustration. He is really good illustrating important points. He said that when he started LSD, it was, I think, early 1958 or something, early era. It was legal at the time, but it really didn't matter. He became a guide. He was kind of had that sort of service idea and integrity to be a guide, and he had a PhD degree, I think, or MD, I don't remember. I think PhD degree, yeah, PhD degree. So he had that academic integrity, so he could be a guide for LSD trips. So a person would ask him, could you guide me through an LSD trip? And Ramdas would be with them, and the person would go on a wonderful trip, and after the trip they felt so much love and unity with God that they would associate that unity with him, with Ramdas. So they would have started having a dinner or lunch with Ramdas every week. And he said, after a while, my calendar was full. I couldn't have lunch with everybody, so I had to stop guiding LSD trips because I couldn't connect to more people. And then he said that later he realized that it's really not, I guess, a lover makes you, brings in a state of oneness and it brings you in a state of love, but then another lover brings you in a state of love, and you can't really marry all the people who bring you in a state of love. Especially for him, he was a traveling person, like a traveling teacher, and he would guide people to come in a state of love, but he couldn't marry everyone. It's really impossible. Or have even a meaningful relationship with everyone. So basically his answer is it's all about you. It's individual. You get in a state of loving. You get in a state of love, and other people are just a prompt for that. Other people just a guide which brings you there, but that's about it. You're still on your own. You cannot merge with another person. You cannot live the whole life with that person. Sometimes it happens, but I'm already like moving away from Ramdas to another teacher, but basically that usually happens because of economic reasons and reasons of housekeeping. Like to really bring up the kids, you need to have a family, you need to have 2 salaries. Then in Western world you can bring up the kids, so you get stuck with the same partner for many years, and you kind of rub so well together that you already match really well. There is already so much connection, but still you cannot merge completely. It's impossible. But the development of the humanity, it's another teacher says, and I felt it ran true, that the humanity now comes to the state where people don't need each other. it's all about individual journey, especially in English culture, English American culture. That lots of people never marry because they don't need other people to accomplish their mission, basically their spiritual mission. So living by yourself is okay, and it looks like it is a path for humanity. All these traditional long-term marriages and things could become obsolete in the future, mostly because people are developing with different speeds. Like you can get a lover, a mate, a partner who is on the same journey, on the same level, and you help each other in your in each other's spiritual development. You are each other's teachers. But after years, sometimes after short periods, and sometimes after many years, you just go apart because you're on one path and they are on another path, and it could be just an artificial situation where you try to stay together while your paths are separated. But of course, there are people who are very well matching each other. There are exceptions, but they're pretty rare. Hold on a second, I need to step. Yes. So, the message is be in a state of love without the need to have a prompt from others. If others help you, that's great. But it's not about them, it's about you being in a state of love. State of love is a very specific state where there is a high vibration, high coherence. It's very similar actually to epilepsy. In epilepsy, a person develops really strong oscillations in the brain, but then they cannot hold them for a long time, so they collapse and they become disabled. But actually, they tell that epileptics really like that ability to develop high vibrational state. Very coherent, very high vibrational, where the whole body is becomes a resonator. Tesla was one of those. He wasn't epileptic, but he was experiencing those Kundalini awakenings, and from young years, and that made him very special. He was able to perceive a lot of things. So yeah, the state of love is great, and you don't need to be in sexual love for that. Some people can develop it using different religious practices. You can be in love with Jesus. You can be in love with Divine Mother. You can be in love with yourself. You can be in love with humanity. It's the state that matters. And the intellectual prompts which bring you there can vary. So meditation is a tool. So replace visits to Poland with meditation. It's just about as efficient. All right. Next topic I wanted to bring up was the channeler's crisis, the channeling crisis. It's just kind of a loud name for a crisis which happens in the channeler's life when they start to channel. So I experienced it And it was pretty painful. And now I see that many people who start channeling, they go through about the same. So what happens is you really want to channel, right? You want to stay, to be in connection with God. You want to be a channel. You want to be a transmitter, a conduit, a transducer, a telephone. So you want to serve as a transmitter of divine messages. And when you think about it, it's a huge idea of service, right? It just fills your life with meaning. Like for me, it was one of those transitions was when I discovered that I can be a healer. Can I be a healer? Wow! Instead of being a patient, you just become a healer. So you shift up a lot in self-perceived value and importance. Healing others is so much better than being a suffering patient, right? Being dysfunctional, suffering, and so on. And then at some point you can heal people and consult people. It's a huge self-esteem boost, right? And then being a channeler was another self-esteem boost, right? You become as important as Daryl Anka channeling Bashar, like affecting lots of people. And it is all true. It's not only imaginary. It's it's boost for the ego. It's lots of energy coming your way, and it's a real energy. The only caveat is that once you're there, you have to get rid of, like, dissolve much of your ego, and you can get unlimited sex. So that's the caveat. When you become so energetic and so important, and then there is a lot of transformations. You have to give up a lot of traditional values for that, like even the money, right? There was a wonderful Georgian movie, like Republic of Georgia movie, and the movie was, the key character was a young girl who was abandoned by her lover, and she was very unhappy. She came to a medicine woman, to a magician, traditional magician. And at that time, the magician was old and dying, so the magician just transferred all her powers, magic powers, on that girl. And the girl received the powers, but at the same time she left. She didn't belong to the world anymore. She basically had to take the same profession, same cave of that medicine woman. She couldn't marry anymore. She would serve other people, but wouldn't have her own life. She would just replace her, like her body would replace her in a structure which is very spiritual. So I guess that's understanding, is that if you want to be a saint, you have to become a saint. I mean, I guess Ram Dass called it holy man. Holy man. You have to become a holy man, a holy woman, right? So their powers come with restrictions. Basically, the main restriction: you cannot use your karma to harm other people anymore. You cannot use your powers to harm other people. Like in the past, if you don't have the powers, you can be afraid, you can be confused, and so on. But when you get at a higher level, you cannot really, you're not allowed to do many things. You have to be like, to keep the powers, to be in the flow, you have to be in a certain state. much smaller ego and much more of the service to the guides, I guess. So back to the idea of the crisis. And the crisis happens first because you want it so much, you jump there, you pump yourself into an oscillator, resonator, the machine which, like the laser, you create a laser out of yourself. And you connect to that energy and it goes through, you do the channeling. But in early stages, you cannot hold it for a long time. It burns you, so you have to come back. And coming back from the high state to lowest is so painful, first. And second, just a second. And second, you become paranoid. It's just a clear outcome from channeling. You become paranoid. Your mind is working on high speed, spinning very fast. So any idea coming in there becomes amplified. That's what you do. You create an amplifier from yourself. You get a tiny bit of information from the spirit world. You amplify it and speak, right? That's what you do. So when you develop that pumping amplifier, and when it's not calibrated yet, if there is no good ideas coming from the higher level, if you kind of drop down to the lower level, you start pumping the ideas from the bottom, I guess. It could be a mechanism. You just pump whatever crazy ideas come to your mind. And second thing what happens, okay, I'll remember. Okay, let me ask. Michelle, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, very quick.
No problem.
I've been trying to channel, for many years, because my father and both my father and grandparents were into the metaphysics since the 60s.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so I was raised in that field, and now living with my mom, it's like I feel so alienated, like I can't belong. How can I channel, the higher entities so I could feel, more emotionally, mentally, and spiritually balanced when it's hard to channel? I don't know if I'm making any sense at all.
Yes,
but
yes, you do.
Yeah, but it's like I can't channel if it saved my life. I mean, and my father and my grandmother trying to help me. They've had friends of the family who've been in this field for like 50 plus years try to help me. And I can't channel if it saved my life. I don't know what else to do. Any suggestions?
Yes, just a second.
Yeah.
My natural instinct is to go. Gosh, hold on, there is a trouble here. Technical trouble. Hold on, I will fix something. I will fix it, just a second. I guess that the spirits intervene. Give me technical trouble so I can Oh, I know what to do. Just a second. Josh. Please. Oh, here. Hey. Okay. I think we should be good now. I think it's working. Hopefully it's working. Hey, no, it's not. Hey, please. What do I do? Can you see me?
Yes, I could see you. Can you see me?
Yes, I guess. Yeah.
Every time I talk about the metaphysics, somebody keeps coming in and disrupting the technology.
Okay. All right. I'm used to that. That's okay. All right. So,
according to some of my friends from the Hucolo website, some of them told me either it's the fairies or some of the members of 𝗪𝗓𝗧 group that are trying to help me out here. So that's why there's always technical trouble whenever I talk about metaphysics.
so
don't be surprised.
What's your month and day of birth?
Month and day? December 24.
Ah.
I hate it. I get ripped off. I get ripped off of the presents. I swear to God I do. That's why I tell my parents, just give me money.
What's your favorite color?
Purple.
I see. I have a feeling that it's still coming. It is still possible. And you are very well connected with the high level of the spirit, at the level where there is no words. So it's one of the reasons you cannot channel using words, because the information you are getting is not expressed in words. It's more like on a creator level and on the planetary level. The planets don't think in words. The planets think in some other things, which
emotion and images.
Yeah, are like much bigger than words. So that's one of the reasons. And then you're also very well grounded. So there is that interaction of high vibration, crown level high vibration, which is no words, and grounded vibration, which is no words. And you still need to integrate that down below, in like from heart to the throat chakra, from crown to the throat chakra. That's possible, and you're doing great. Don't hurry. Just take your time. It's growing. It's like growing into yourself, reconnecting yourself into more complete, more integrated being.
Okay.
That's my take. And the key tool which Jim and I always recommend is healing, Reiki healing. Reiki is one of the simplest ways of working with energy. There are other ways like pendulum, how do they call this? Those little rods with like copper rods.
Dowsing rods?
Dowsing rods, yeah.
Dowsing rods.
And working with crystals and working with herbs and incense. And finally, yoga. Yoga is great.
I do Reiki. I've done Reiki since high school, and it was 𝗪𝗓𝗧 herself that told me the other day to use this certain crystal. It was one of my friends went into a trance for me and brought in 𝗪𝗓𝗧, which was very nice, and it was 𝗪𝗓𝗧 herself that told me to use this kind of crystal. It's a specialized quartz to connect with different dimensions, and so it's healing because of anxiety attacks.
Anxiety attacks, wow.
Yeah, so it was 𝗪𝗓𝗧 herself that recommended this kind of crystal.
Yay.
Yeah.
So I will continue.
I just wanted to share that. Sorry.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
I will continue the story about the channeler's crisis. So you know the dangers of becoming a channel. Yeah, you cannot be a channeler when you have panic attacks. You shouldn't be. It's not healthy. So master your panic attacks first, and then you can be a channeler.
Yeah, that's all I need to practice on.
It's like
I'm getting close.
It's not that you don't get panic attacks. I still get panic attacks, but you kind of go through them like half steam. It's like done. Yeah, my panic attack is kind of a simple routine, which is like easy to chew and go through. And even now the, how do you call it, the paranoia attacks are even more damaging for me, because they usually take weeks for me. Like I become really obsessed about some imaginary dangers and amplify them. So that's kind of a side effects of becoming of really working hard on coherence. When you become coherent and when you become an amplifier, whatever comes into your mind can saturate you with that, amplifying yourself, right? So having a guru, a guide, a friend who you trust, who can look from outside and heal you from that paranoia, really helps. Like my wife, she just would recognize it and deal with it.
Yeah,
And
for
Jim would
me,
recognize it and deal with it.
Yeah, for me, it's my brother's fiance who's basically there for me. She does that. Like she's like, Michelle, breathe, and she's like the outsider looking in, and within minutes I'm like breathing, relaxing, and it's better than holding on to it for like weeks on end. Now I could hold it on for like maybe 10 minutes to an hour, depending on what it is. And that's it. Thanks to my brother's fiance.
Yay.
Yeah.
So another reason for the crisis is the health issues. Basically, when you cannot hold that high vibration, it burns you, so you go down, and at that time you become really fragile. And if you didn't build yet the support system, like your family, your routines, your expectations, then you feel that you are in danger. And that danger is pretty real. It's not only that you imagine a danger, you're paranoid, but it's pretty real. Your system has trouble holding that energy. You channel God, but you can explode from that. And because you trust God, you trust the spirits, you cannot blame them for that. But any danger from the same level where you are, from your community, like a friend or a former friend or foe, right? It's called foe, or somebody in a community who seems to be tuning into your danger. Maybe even they feed from your ability to fall apart. You become really paranoid about them being dangerous for you. So it's not only that they are dangerous, it's because you are in a state where you're fragile. That combination of them connected to your fragility, is it the word? Fragility is fragileness, breakability. Them connected to your vulnerable state, that's it's pretty real, but realize if you get out of this vulnerable state, that will become not real. So just get kind of understand the mechanisms and take it easy and do it in the smaller chunks. Like if you learn to channel, don't jump on it and channel every day, because that's what usually happens. You channel every day, and then after a short while you become burned, vulnerable, and become paranoid. So getting around and returning to your routine and creating a routine out of channeling is the way out. So you take it a little bit in a time, get the support of friends, get support of guides here and there, and make a routine out of it. Like as with Reiki, there is a routine. I don't know if Jim had a crisis when he started channeling. I didn't notice, but I think he was pretty much ready. And actually, I was giving him tons of support when he started channeling. I was feeding him with my energy, feeding him with Reiki. So it was yeah, he was well supported. So whenever he had any kind of doubt or crisis, I was there for him to support. So he had pretty, I think, reasonable transition here. And we didn't go public. It was all private for I knew that really well, that going public is, on one hand, it helps you to channel. On the other hand, it's they suck energy out of you. You become they pull it out of you. So I didn't publish anything. I kept it really quiet for from May to October. So it's like 5 months. He had a chance to transition into routine. And when we started publishing things, it was I usually gave a delay of maybe a couple of weeks. So when you separate from your recording, and then people cannot tune into you as easy because you already separate from it. So doing it in real time is much harder, and doing it on public is much harder. And if you publish a recording and you're still attached to that recording, you can feel people connecting to you, and sometimes it's love and sometimes it's not as much love. So, and sometimes it's the kind of love which sucks energy out of you. So for me it was, yeah, when I first started doing that kind of recordings, I was so drained. I'm sensitive to that. So it took for me, like, I would have a script, I would write a script or invent a script. I would take a sentence. It would take for me maybe 5-7 takes to be able to pronounce the sentence. I would assemble all my energy. I already was kind of into Reiki. Assemble my energy, record the sentence, and then I will stop the recording, and I would recover after that, because it was, I would cough, and it was really, really draining to do public speaking on record on YouTube.
Then let me ask you, is it possible that beings would want to talk to you telepathically instead of having somebody go into a trance?
Yeah, that's much easier. Yes, it's called psychic work. It's about the same.
That's what I'm experiencing. That's what I'm going through. Like I'm having like them trying to communicate with me telepathically on the psychic level, instead of going to a third party and having them going to transfer you, we're just going to talk to you directly through a psychic telepathy, so that it's just you and me, not with a third party. So I'm like, oh, okay, it took me a few days to get used to it, but now I'm learning and being trained as to how to hear them properly and stuff. But it's like static. It feels like static is coming through.
I hear so much static.
Yeah, and it's weird, and I feel like I'm going nuts. I feel like I'm crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going schizophrenic over here or something? Like, am I going insane? Or is this for real?
Don't keep it all on yourself. Write it down, type it in, create some sort of system of files where you write the things down.
Oh, like journaling.
Yeah, journaling, yeah. And make sure you back it up so you wouldn't be sorry later. Yeah, like Dropbox or Google. Or send it by email to yourself so you have some sort of online cloud storage for that.
Okay, because I started journaling earlier today about that, like with some experiences, because a part of me feels like I'm nuts.
It's much healthier to have that kind of channeling. You don't let them inside, you just listen to them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also, when I started, I kind of tried to make it a good show, and I was thinking that I'm channeling that one person now, and if I invite someone else, that person would be better answering that question. So in one public session, I changed, I think, 4 or 5 different entities. And after that, I was so sick. It was so hard on my energy. So Jim is capable of like changing maybe 4 or 5 of them, but he's special. They trained him and they modified him, so it took a lot of modifications so he can channel that easily. And if I let people come through me, it's just very stressful. So I choose who I allow and who I invite. And even with one person, with Yogananda, it's like several hours before the session, it is a preparation, and I feel the transition, and then usually the whole day after that is another, I'm coming back to the normal state. So it is a very involved process. It's maybe like 1 hour and a half I'm in online, but the whole day is kind of is entrance and exit. So it is it affects health, but it affects in both directions. If you do it wrong, if you kind of try to mix it with other life, then it can be contradictory energies. They hurt you. But if you do it right, it heals you. Like very often, I feel like I'm like falling apart, and I invite the spirits. I go into self Reiki meditation, and like today, it was the feeling I was already awakened for after that. I get out of that state, and I still feel that energy going, and I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It's a buzz, which is like your body is stiff in certain parts, like heart and like where your hands are, is very stiff, very tense, and it's like buzzing, like with vibration, and it feels a little painful, like burning, like little burn, like the whole area is it's like having orgasm, I guess. It's like having orgasm, just not in the sexual parts, but like in the heart orgasm, or liver orgasm. It's like having liver orgasm. That's what it is. It's like zzz. All right. So there is a lot of electricity. It's like it's transdimensional. Obviously, it's not there. It's the main action happens not in physical. It's out there, but there is some effect on physical part, and so exiting from it is very important. You give yourself time to exit from that treatment, but they heal me reasonably well. I'm really thankful. I go into the meditation, healing meditation, in pretty damaged state, and come out quite normal. And that's a big gift. So I invite the healers. They come and heal me, and that is a huge part of the channeling work. Like if you do that work, you have to be a self-healer. If you cannot heal yourself, you will fall apart.
I know, because I've been doing, as I said before, I've done Reiki since high school, so healing is very natural for me. It's just everything else. Yeah.
Max, I have a question about the crisis. People who are Fruitarians, Brevarians, they naturally have much higher energies because their bodies are much more purer.
Mm-hmm.
Would they then have, you think, like less crisis?
Oh yeah, I'm not talking for everybody. I think I'm coming from a very mixed background. I have been trained to be a mainstream person, right? Lots of training. So for mainstream person to come into that could be hard. Or I don't know, there are some talented channelers who do that easily. They don't really have to go in trance and to allow the other being to be in their body. They have a little radio station, and they get messages like textual messages or some other kind of messages. And for me, I'm still a beginner. I know the answers, but I have to translate them, and the answers don't come from outside to me. I don't hear the outside voices. I hear the buzz, but I cannot, not the buzz, the white noise or high frequency, high pitch white noise. I cannot interpret it, but whatever comes is through inside. It's me getting into higher state, a high vibrational state, like a laser pumped up. And in that state, I'm smarter. So whatever comes intuitively comes better. but it's still not from outside. It's my higher self speaking. Just I'm connecting close. I'm becoming close to higher self, and I'm speaking. Right? It's still me speaking. It's not somebody else. That's my perception. So some other people, they clearly hear the voices from outside, and I do that once in a while, but it's not my way of channeling. My way of channeling is from inside. But yeah, sometimes, yeah, like things, nice. I get nice messages, and sometimes they are like clearly it's not me. Sometimes they're clearly not me. Like my physical mind says no, and I say, "Do you agree?" And they say, "Say yes." And I say, "Are you sure?" They say, "Absolutely." All right, I say yes, and they are right, and I'm wrong, right? So it's like being able to calibrate and talk to them, and important questions. It helps. Like that was like a question of health for somebody important, and we had to decide to do a surgery or not to do the surgery. From physical max is like always again the surgery to the last moment, and they said, "Do it now." I said, "Okay." We agreed to the surgery. We wasted like $800, and we like spent $800 on a dog, and yay, it was all fixed. It was perfect, and they found what they were looking for. So it was a proof that the spirits were right, and I was just I don't trust doctors, so it's natural for me just to question everything they say. So at that point, it was like the message was absolutely clear. I said, my wife asked, "No, should we agree or not?" I said, "No, no, no." And then I said, "Hold on, give me a couple minutes. I will step out and talk to them." I went out, spoke to my spirit guides, and the message was so clear it couldn't be mistaken. It was like, okay, if they say so, I agree.
Well, I was never able to channel up on my conscious demand, but quite often I notice that I am channeling not intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like something channels through me, which I assume my higher self, because I suddenly start saying things without any conscious thought. And those things are very wise things. So I notice that, and I'm like, okay, who said that? Like I become observer of somebody speaking through me, but I don't initiate. It happens.
Yeah, I was writing poetry 2 periods in my life. When I was a young person, and then I was pretty adult. Like I was like in my 18s, 20s, and in my 30s, I wrote a lot of poetry. And in the 30s, it was very good poetry. I really still like it. It was very, very spiritually guided poetry. And so I had a lot of practice to play ping pong or volleyball with more like volleyball. It's speed-wise, it's more volleyball with the spirit. So I do the step, and then I wait for them to answer. And for me, it was absolutely clear when it went right, and I got the contribution from the spirit, and it was clear when I get it wrong, so I can feel like they are silent or I'm in the right state. And even then, it was like many years ago. It was 17 years ago when I wrote it. So even then, I was able to get into meditative state and write the poetry. So I clearly had a calibration. If the poetry goes right, if I record it correctly, you can still see the signature of the spirit there. And if you don't get in the right state, nothing can help. You can't really. So
you can do the same with painting.
Yeah, so it is a dialogue. It is a dialogue. It could be a monologue, but for me, it is usually a dialogue. My physical mind contributes to the conversation, and then they contribute to the conversation. And you can always calibrate what comes out. You can see if it is properly tuned in or not. For you, I would recommend Galactic Languages. Are you good with Galactic Languages?
Can you say anything more about that?
Oh, we do we have like look at Galactic. Just Google on YouTube, search Galactic Languages Hucolo, and you will see the classes on Galactic Languages, and just hear them and feel that it's natural for us to speak Galactic Languages because we had incarnations. We can connect spiritually to the aliens. We can speak those things, and then you just start to babble and speak.
But Max, what is the purpose if telepathy is basically one common language? What's the purpose of individual languages on that level?
The telepathy is not universal. Telepathy has a language. There are few universal meanings coming through telepathy, but it requires a language.
Well, I had twice experience when basically a guinea pig spoke to me.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
And I understood, spoke to me like what? I mean, I know that it was that animal.
Okay.
So I ended up thinking that there is a one common language, but maybe, maybe I'm mistaken.
I just ask the aliens when I discuss telepathy with different aliens. I always ask, other different languages for telepathy, and they say there are.
Okay.
And there are universal translators, there are universal galactic languages, but every species develops, every race develops their own telepathic language, which is not necessarily the same as spoken language. It could be different.
Max, I'm going to have to head out. I have to get up at 3 in the morning, so good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. I need to head out too.
For me, it's 12:43 a.m.
All right. Good night. Thank you much. We had a nice session. Nice to have had you on my show. All right. Good night. Thank you.
Wow.